Welcome to this quantum security and defense presentation, preparing for a post-quantum cryptography project. And thank you for being a valued member of our community. Jeffrey Duran is a seasoned leader with over 30 years of experience in operations, growth, and sales, including 15 years in cybersecurity. Currently serving as COO at QryptoCyber, he focuses on operational excellence and scaling processes to address the challenges of post-quantum risk and cryptographic discovery. His career includes leading roles in startups like Invotas, acquired by FireEye, and enSilo, acquired by Fortinet, as well as contributing to major organizations like Verizon and Army Cyber Command. A 35-year U.S. Army veteran, Jeff's strategic expertise was honed through 7 overseas tours, managing initiatives from tactical to strategic levels. He is also a passionate advocate for integrating veterans into cybersecurity roles to address the industry's talent gaps. As a former head of cybersecurity portfolio strategy at Verizon, Jeff influenced key industry reports like the DBIR and Payment Security Report. He also advises SaaS firms and actively speaks on topics ranging from quantum security to operational strategies. His exemplary service has earned him numerous accolades, including the DoD's Top Award for Defense Communications.
So I love the pretty pictures, unlike Steve. That's my shindig. So be prepared for some great visuals because I'm all into that. I do appreciate that Steve has just the messaging portion, but I like the whole integrated thing. So let me start off with who is this guy? So my name is Jeff Duran. I've been in cybersecurity. I started with Army Cyber Command back in 2010 and then went to a number of other vendors that you can see there, running 38 product lines in Verizon for cybersecurity. Previous to this, I was at Quintessence Labs and we're working with QKD, QRNG, key management systems, great folks. But what I realized there is when I got started with the whole thing is nobody understood where encryption was. And so it's really hard to sell a QRNG, QKD, and all the other things when you're step 3. And so I had gotten that idea of like, well, let's figure out where things are first before we actually try to fix the problem, because that's the biggest thing. And I was utterly shocked. I mean, I've been in cybersecurity for a while, but I'd never been around cryptography. I knew vaguely what all this stuff was, but I didn't really understand it in the detail of nobody actually tracks what encryption's going on where. And that was a real big shock for me because I assumed, with all the zero trust stuff and everybody is talking about no, nobody had any clue where anything was. There's no Excel spreadsheets. There's nothing going on. And so now where we are is talking about S bombs and C bombs and AI and orchestration and being prepared. So I want to go ahead and skip to the most important part, which is really what are the lessons learned that we've had from our perspective. And so when we've doing these projects, no one wants to own this project. And that's just the way it really is. And I completely understand it. And this goes back to if you've been in cybersecurity for a while, it's just like DLP. Nobody wanted to own DLP for a long time because it's a 5-year process of classification of data. Nobody's going to get promoted on it. Nobody's going to have parades at the end. Nobody's going to celebrate your success in changing cryptography for the next 5 to 7 years. And so what we tried to do is do more of making sure that those people are successful in what they're doing. And so you should absolutely take a look, and I want to kind of separate this thing. There's consulting services and there's remediation services. And so those services are absolutely going to be crucial for your organization's success. Because remediation services, you're not going to be able, even with AI and orchestration will give you the hope you need to be able to get it done. But the reality is what's going to happen is there's way too much work to be able to get done with normally the staff you have on hand. Engaging in consulting services such as Steve are fantastic because they guide you through the process, but we absolutely recommend you get an inventory first before engaging in and committing to remediation services, because until you do your inventory, you really don't understand what you have, because you might have a lot of legacy things that are going to require a lot of comprehensive remediation services, as opposed to you have a million little things, but it's all grind work, right? Each one of these things is somewhat different, and every enterprise is vastly different. So number one, getting executive buy-in on this whole project. If you can't get the executive team involved, one of the things we offer too is, post inventory is able to do some quantitative analysis to show you exactly where you are from a financial risk standpoint. If not, your consulting services can certainly help there as well. And we've seen this again and again, as Steve brought up, doing a full inventory, because there are lots of ways to do an inventory. You can do it yourself. You can put out an Excel spreadsheet like the US government has and just fill some data in and hope that that's really what it is. The reality is you want to do that 5-pillar inventory to be able to make sure you have the right things, because doing your roadmap and doing your budget on a 7 to 10 year project, you should probably get your regular, your full inventory as great as it can possibly be at the front end. And again, obviously we do inventory services from a SaaS model, but we also say is spend your time on remediation. Don't try to do it yourself on an inventory. It's just not. We've seen time and time again. If you spend a year doing your inventory and being able to get it consistent, that's a year you didn't spend on remediation, because that's what really matters. When building your roadmap, understand that this is a continuous process, and we have seen endlessly getting your code developers in bed with the whole project is vital, because again, if they're not pushing code that is PQC standard, you're going to end up chasing more and more things as they come on. And the next piece is finding that corner. Okay, so once you get your inventory and everything else, most people lose hope. And I tell you, I can't tell you enough how many people we've seen, they see the millions and millions of pieces of crypto, they look at it, and they just give up, because it looks hopeless. It isn't. With AI and orchestration and services, this is doable, but it looks really bad when you see that amount of crypto that you have to change. It's soul crushing. Don't let that fool you. We can get this done. You have to start. And what we say is find the corner. Find something, whether it's certificates or whatever you want to do, pick something and just start on it, because you can get it done. And then it's just the grind, right? There's a lot of grind here, and you have to be able to get that grind going. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about third-party risks. So we've entered into a partnership with Venari, which is a fantastic company. And what we looked at from what we can get from their data, again, is third-party risk, because the biggest problem we're seeing right now is, great, you've started your inventory as an enterprise. You've started the whole process. You are, leading the charge. Well, you need to get your third parties motivated and on board now, because otherwise you're not going to be able to be compliant at the end, because your third parties are still not on a PQC project, right? So that's a huge problem. And we've seen this, again, third-party risk over and over again in cybersecurity. If you can't get your third parties involved, it can introduce risk into your environment. So the biggest thing we can say is, as you start your project, push down that you're going to expect your vendors to also start PQC, because if they're not on board now, it's going to take them a while to spin up. And probably I'd say the last thing, lessons learned, is when you're starting inventory, that team or committee that you bring into your enterprise, understand that you need to have your InfoSec and IT folks on that committee, because most of what we're talking about here, there's no quantum built into this. This is, again, we're changing one form of cryptography out for another form. Should you have cryptographers? If not, we know people, right? Your consulting services like Steve can put you in the right hands. You don't necessarily have to have quantum people and cryptographers on that committee to be able to get things done. We can do it for, consulting side. Again, we do not charge. We do not make any money off of anything else other than our tool. So the consultants like Steve, they're out there to help you. again, rely on them to get the right people on that team and that first committee to start the whole project. Uh, Super simple to do that. So let's get into it. This may be an analogy for the US government right now, but really what we're talking about is cryptography. And we've really seen with how things are, it's not a Greek tragedy, but the whole form of where we are with cryptography, it's pretty bad. So what are we going to do? We've talked about this, Steve kind of delved into this, so I'm going to kind of skip through this. But really, it's what does an attacker see? How do you consume cryptography? What assets are impacted? What are your critical data stores, and where is it embedded? And part of that is, again, where do things that really need to make happen in the future? Number one, from a CBOM standpoint, you need to be able to import and export, right? That's the main thing that you have to do from the CBOM. The CBOM is your data repository. It's essentially your database of your crypto management. And as a flat file, sure, you can import it into something, but who knows what you're going to import it to, right? And that's where orchestration really comes in. So with orchestration, you're being able to functionally put data into other systems, whether you're going to be putting it into tickets in the SOC, or you're going to subset of different CBOMs, and we'll get into that in a minute. And finally, AI. AI is going to be super crucial on figuring out how you can actually get things done, because there's just so much work involved here. A CBOM for an enterprise is so huge to be able to manage. And again, I already talked a little bit about third-party risk here, but third-party risk is something that you should be already operationalizing inside your IT and InfoSec communities internally. Because if your vendors don't know this is coming, it's going to take a while for them to get spun up. There's still plenty of people in denial that quantum's a thing. Make sure that you are pushing it down. If you are creating a PQC project, your vendors need to be creating their own PQC projects where they connect to you. And when we talked about the post-quantum journey, this has been across many other presentations, so I won't delve in it too much. But you have to look at, again, where we've seen the inventory grow is we originally were just going to be, here's your inventory, good luck, right? That's where we wanted to be. But what we're finding is when we've done that inventory, people don't understand exactly what they have. And so we have to be able to help them both from an orchestration and AI perspective, trying to get into the controls and the remediation. And again, finally, monitoring. Did you succeed at what you did? Have you put in more things that are causing more problems? Coming back and forth for that constant remediation is the way to really do that. And this is where we originally thought we were going to be, right? So we start off with, we do the inventory. Here's your cryptographic bill of materials. There's an example there on the right. Go do your remediation. Great. But that's not really how it works, because what happens is this just spirals into more and more manual remediation and work. And that's where companies are just getting overwhelmed. And that's why we've kind of adjusted how we do things now, which is building out a AI model that, again, that brings into multiple different kinds of CBOMs. And I can go through these in a little bit more detail if you need. But really what it looks like is creating all these different targeted CBOMs for different kinds of things. And that's where that natural language query inside of an AI model that we use now gives you that specific thing so you can operationalize the data. Because then we can feed that through the orchestration engine. Some of that can be auto remediation by connecting up to other PQC tools. Some of it is, again, other PQC tools that we don't, that you have to do manually over to them. And then there's some stuff that you're just going to have legacy that is going to have to be very distributed stuff. And finally, before we get to the demo, again, if we can help you with anything, it's being able to provide dollars or pounds or euros of risk, right? Because if you're going to talk to the business, you have to be able to talk about risk. And where is the risk of not doing this project? That's one of the things we partnered with a great company called Derive that gives us this quantitative analysis that gives you what we call high resolution risk. It's not, stoplights green, red, yellow. This gives you the in-depth detail to be able to say, if I implement this control versus that control, this is the output of that financial risk. And that's where we've really seen a lot of value, because now you can communicate to the business why quantum is so crucial. Hopefully that all makes sense. All right, let me just pause here and stop for any questions, and I'll get the demo lined up.
Let me read the question. There was a question from Bill in the chat. Is NSA suggest 2028 as the Q date migration, and this says 2030? Would you know the why in the two-year difference?
Well, there's never going to be a Q day. To be honest, anything that is, if anybody has the ability to break public key encryption, they're not going to advertise it. And we've seen this over history. No crypto system has survived the stretch of time, right? So if you look at who can operationalize that particular breaking of public key encryption, look, with Bletchley Park and the purple codes and Enigma, we didn't find for 30 years after those things were broken that they were actually broken at what time they were broken. Anybody that tells us that, oh, there's not going to be something, oh, China's not going to come up and say, oh, we can now break everybody's encryption. No, they're going to operationalize that and steal all your data. Again, not saying specifically China, sorry, that should be clear. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I'm just saying if an adversary can break encryption, they're not going to tell anybody. With NIST here in the United States, the last thing out of the Biden administration was move ASAP, with the expiration of 2035 as being the total deprecation of RSA, and 2030. The point is, you don't, right now, to be honest, any enterprise, the length of time it's going to take you to switch over is past the time that it's going to be dead. I hope that helps. But I would say that the 2-year difference, everybody's going to argue about semantics, and I swear to God, it's like a religion with some folks. You can't argue the fact that it's coming. Here we go. I hope that answers the question without me rambling too much.
Well, I totally agree. I think NSA, they more see the urgency behind the transformation, and this is more directed towards the market to make it feasible to do this transition. So I think that's why there is a little bit of disagreement on the date. And like Jeffrey points out, nobody's going to advertise it. Maybe it already happened a couple of years ago. That's maybe an opinion some people share with me. We have to be preparing and doing this transition, and we have to start as soon as possible. Doesn't matter which date is being seen as the Q date.
Okay. There's more questions. Can you? Okay. Is your CBOM homegrown, or does it leverage open source?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I'm trying to mute one person. Is your CBOM homegrown, or does it leverage open source? If OS, then what protection of data sets once consumed are you implementing? Okay,
so there's two real models of the CBOM right now, right? Again, Cyclone DX was the first, and the folks over at Banco Santander have done an absolutely fantastic job. And I can't recommend them enough of how they've been kind of doing some of the open source stuff. We can import and export either one, right? It doesn't really matter to us. It matters from our perspective and our clients. We find the reporting is completely different based on what they're looking for. We're super flexible in the way we do it. Some other folks are maybe a little bit more limited, but in our case, you set the reporting and we kick it out. It's super simple from our side. If we have a choice, we'd rather use the Banco Santander version, because there's a little bit, it's a better one to me than Cyclone DX, but Cyclone DX has a lot more standardization through it. So whichever one works. Steve, did you have any commentary on that?
No, not at the point, not at this point.
Okay. So let me go ahead.
Maybe Anna. Yeah.
Yep, sorry. So the next question is from Greg Pitts. Most people, including the speakers today, keep using encryption and cryptography synonymously. They aren't. The descriptions of cryptography are fine or good, but encryption is non-existent. That's, I think, a comment more than the question. Or
Okay. Yeah, I was looking for the question in there. So no worries.
So that's the commentary, and thank you, Greg, for sharing the link. And then the next question is from Paul. Are these financial risk data available?
Can you repeat the last again?
Are the financial risks you mentioned available? Details.
Are they available?
Available, I think you said.
Yeah, available data on the financial risks.
Yeah. Again, it's a quantitative analysis program, so it usually is based on the customer's specifics and where the market is. The company that we've teamed up with is called Derive, and that's where the data resides. So it's usually a post-inventory process of understanding where your risks are and being able to create that risk model around the enterprise. It's usually not a plug and play. There's a little bit of extra effort into it, but in the end, it's not a lot of effort once we've run the inventory. Can you see my screen here?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go through this real quick. Arion is a customer, and they have given us permission to be able to show this. So Arion. Sorry? Oh, somebody was on. So Arion tracks commercial satellites, does commercial aircraft in air traffic control, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So networks are very crucial for them, and they use this tool to manage their post-quantum processes. Again, they are a client, and they have given us permission to show this, with the exception of the vulnerability data, which we've left out. So this is our external tool. And so first we want to check on the OS and see what that OS is. They use a lot of Solaris because of what they are. So that's what you're seeing on the unknown side. Then you have the asset, the state, if it's online or offline. Enabled means we can pull crypto from it. The score is based on NIST, but that is configurable if you are in a country that does something different and you want to do a different scoring methodology. Location is very important from us because, again, this is an external scan, tells us exactly where it's showing up. And every time we run an external scan, we usually find things that people were not expecting to find. And this is true for any attack surface management tool that if you've ever run one or vulnerability scan from the external side, you will always find things that you may not have really known that was out there. So when you get those questions, what are those 10 boxes in Jamaica doing? Well, that's your network. We can help you figure that out, but really that's where this is. And it's also very important to keep where the discovery date is because things come up in online and offline. And we've seen this a lot of times with OT, with an IoT. So some of the things will show up and disappear depending on the network and where they are, especially with IoT and OT. If it's, they're reconfiguring a firewall, that all things happen. We want to make sure that we have that discovered date so we understand how long it's been there and what it's doing. And when we click on the post-quantum, this gives you your total assets with support and without support. And again, segmenting by OS as well. Again, unknown is Solaris. What are the supported curves? And you can go all the way down deep into this and be able to get really deep into the data of what's going on. And if you scroll further down, you can see, let me click next here. This is where we leave off. So we can figure out where things are and be able to figure out what we still have to work on. We do a port scan. And again, the importance of a port scan is making sure where things are sitting. It doesn't matter if it's cloud, on-prem, whatever it is. We want to understand what are the open ports, what things are going through that, but it also reduces false positives because false positives are an important thing for us to weed out so you don't do more work. Again, vulnerability information we've taken out of this environment because it's still ongoing. Let me go to another partner who has given us permission to look at this. And again, this is what we look from the CVEs, and that gives you more vulnerability data around what that is. Let me go back to Arion. So app scan. So we really want to understand from what applications are running, and this is very much client dependent on what things they want to track and how they want to track it. Certificates, we've found that this is the most important thing for a lot of different clients of us. We have a number of clients that are just looking at their certificates right now because that's the easiest thing for them to remediate on a regular basis. So with the certificates, we break it down. This is SSL.org, which is again a global standard. If you have a different standard you wanted to work from, we could probably do that, but SSL is usually the best. So now we'll go into task management. We'll create a workflow. So now this is the orchestration engine on the back end. This is the coolest stuff to be able to do. So we can just create a task. We want to get certificates. We want to do a port scan and do an app scan. So then we can keep down here, update quantum info. That's fine. Online check. Get who is. All right, doesn't really matter. So we'll save the workflow. Then we'll go to run workflow. Turn everything on. Run workflow. So this is live on the Arion environment. So as you can see, things are already moving and doing that external scan and getting all the data that we wanted to be able to do. That kind of gives you a rundown of the tool and everything else that we've done, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm gonna go and read the questions that we still missed. Okay, so far.
Okay.
So they are keep flowing. So I think last time we left off here, so that would be by William. It's a commentary. That's the only crypto system that wasn't broken was the Navajo code talkers during the Second World War in Korea, Vietnam. Then there's a question, if you could please write the 2 CBOM tools that you mentioned there, Jeff.
Name the 2 CBOM tools?
Yes.
So Cyclone DX and I don't remember off the top of the head the open source that Banco Santander did. I'd have to come back to you. Steve, do you know that one off the top of your head? I can't remember. They named it, but they just did a fantastic job with it.
No, I can't remember. Sorry.
Open from the group. Is Mark on? I know he signed up.
Jeff, it starts with a T. It was in that same conference that you and I attended, the PQC conference.
Yeah. We can get that back to you as needed, but they did an open source. It's on Get. And again, it's a great format. I had talked to Mark Carney about that. He runs the DEF CON Quantum Village, and he has demonstrated a bunch of that stuff through there too. And of course, the whole Banco Santander team is just fantastic at what they've been leading the charge on this.
Next question is from John. Can you please unpack the AI capabilities that you have mentioned in your solutions? For example, what kind of AI, how do you ensure explainability? If incorporating Gen AI, how do you address hallucinations and lack of deterministic responses?
So to simplify what we do with AI is, again, we've partnered with an external firm that basically we are teaching that for each customer, and again, a CBOM, QBOM, whatever you want to call it, it's essentially, again, if the easiest way is looking at it as JSON, right? It's super easy to teach any AI model what a CBOM is. And so then all you have to do is, once you've taught that piece, is to be able to do the natural language queries. We're not making anything super complicated here. We're just taking a piece of data and being able to manipulate it. And again, you could do the same thing with filters, but it's really hard, right? So if you wanted to be able to do a filter-based system to be able to line across all of your networks and, all 5 pillars, you'd have to 12 different filters to get down to the data you need. And all we're doing is basically using that AI model to go through and find that data that you're specifically looking for, and then throwing that into the orchestration engine to create either tickets or remediation. And again, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're not really going into super creative AI. I think we may over time, but right now, this is just simply a big data problem. And AI is the easiest way to solve that, if that makes sense.
Michael had some question. How did you reach the numbers in the graph? But I don't know which graph you wanted to
He's talking about the financial. That was just an example of one of a client of a piece thing. Each one of those graph numbers is dependent on your particular financial risk and your controls. Happy to go, again, just reach out to me directly and I can set up a demo for you. It's super easy to go through. It doesn't take maybe 10, 15 minutes to go through that piece.
We have a question from Bill. Are you scanning your secrets?
Yes.
Quick question. Quick answer. Very good. And then Andy, my take on facing PQC threats is that no matter whether you use quantum agility, quantum plus AI, or QKT, the data is still available for advanced hacking. The absolute solution is destroying data. And gives 2 references. I assume those are patents. Patent number describe a computing architecture secure system which protects data anywhere, anytime, and has data self-destruction capability. Any commentary?
Yeah,
Commentary. Well, and I can address that too. And again, talking about QKD systems, right? In between boxes on QKD, it's absolutely, there's no way to break it right now, and probably won't be in our lifetime. However, if I can get physical access to that box, it really doesn't matter. Or if I can get, if I can pop the box on the back end, well, it doesn't really matter. But again, the majority is, how do we make it harder on the attacker? Certainly, if you were sending things from point to point across the internet, sure, you want to have as much crypto as you can. Yeah, and we had this conversation. I've had this conversation a number of times that internally, if you can break into somebody's internal network or internal, get credentials for all those things, yeah, that is, crypto is not necessarily going to help you because you have the decryption availability based on that box that you've popped. Yes, but the still basis of, again, even zero trust is you have to be able to encrypt at the basic level, because that is the most important thing. And let me go back and address one thing too, is when about the secrets piece, is what we found is nobody wants another agent on their device, right? We have our own agent. Most of the other inventory providers have their own agent. That's necessarily a bad idea, and nobody really wants that. We're perfectly okay with it, and I just took that as the BYOA on the original slide. But to go a little bit deeper is, we're able to use other people's currently deployed tools to be able to request the information that we need. Or they can just export it out to us and we can import it into our tool based on that kind of description. So each one of those pieces, we're able to go through, pull that data, and throw it back into our tool and be able to do it. Can you do that yourself? Probably. It's going to take you a while. And what we've seen is those people who have tried to do it themselves, they spend a year messing around with it and being able to do it. Was it cheaper for them? No, because the amount of man hours that they spent doing that was immense, when they could have spent a year on remediation. Absolutely, you can figure out your own inventory, and just the same as Walmart can hire, can pay all their employees to go count all the boxes on the thing. Most people have, in retail, they have external subcontractors for inventory because they're more efficient at it. Again, you can absolutely do it yourself. It will take you a while, and will you ever know that you've had any real success? And you have to do it repeatedly. Thanks. Any more questions? Sorry about that.
I also want to pick in quickly on the point that Andy made about destroying the data. Unfortunately, sometimes you are obliged by compliance reasons to keep that data for 10 years or longer. Of course, after that, immediately destroying the data is, of course, the best way, and doing this using the security standards is, of course, very necessary. And I see Bill also asked the question, like, you're 100% on the in-between, and nobody seems to care about the endpoints. I think Jeffrey was referring to the QKD that you could put in between the two nodes, but on the endpoints itself, you can also use PQC protected hard disks, USB sticks, whatever, to protect your data at rest. So there is certainly concern about the endpoints. We do care about the endpoints, and we protect them as well. Of course, again, like Jeffrey pointed out, getting physical access, using side channel attacks, it might still be possible. It depends on the isolation that the vendors use in their products. But normally, this will be practically impossible to do for not a security pen testing expert.
Yeah, Steve, you're absolutely right. Again, as long as you have the hygiene that you're expected to have on the InfoSec side, then yeah, can somebody still break? Everybody will always be able to break into some box eventually on some way. It may not be with, again, breaking encryption, but it may be able to do something else, right? If we talk about insider threat, obviously, if it's an employee that is not actually your employee, but an adversary, they're going to have access to that kind of stuff. These same things that we have in cybersecurity are still going to be continued. The only difference is we have to protect against nation state threats with crypto, because again, what can a nation state, a state-sponsored intelligence apparatus operationalize from an intelligence, right? What can they break and be able to use? Those things are going to be the vastly important pieces where we're at. I don't see necessarily that we'll have quantum ransomware anytime in our careers. Could be wrong with the way things are moving in quantum, but my guess is it's still going to be a state-sponsored threat. You're not really going to have random ransomware people talking about breaking your encryption.
Actually, I'm curious about your opinion. Like, I mean, you're doing this discovery, right? But then there is so many emerging PQC solutions, right? I mean, there are those that are recommended, but there is so many startups coming, and then at the moment, it seems like there's gonna be solutions that are fine-tuned for the applications. How do end users should navigate that? Like, once they know what they need,
Yeah, I mean, and that's the same thing.
Of that type of solutions.
Yeah, the best way is once you do an inventory, you know what you have. You solve that mystery first, and then you have an understanding of where your problems are. And all those problems are solvable. It's just, again, it's great that we're having a lot of extra solutions, and really it takes us a day to connect up the orchestration engine to about anybody else that has an API. And if you have a certain legacy product, because again, God help us, OT is just an absolute, dumpster fire, as we were saying earlier. It's going to be hard. Some of this stuff's really super legacy. And it may end up that you have to work with an HSM with a certificate authority to rewrap some sort of crypto on top of it. We don't know what we don't know until we know it, right? Again, it's unknown unknowns that are out there. Once we have known unknowns, then we're able to work from that. But we've never done this before. Nobody's ever done this before other than changing out cryptography. And this is the same sort of thing when we talk about nobody's gotten to that finalized point where everything is perfect. It's never going to get there, right? create, again, once you have that inventory to create your roadmap, find your prioritized data, protect those sorts of things. I used it in my last blog. I talked about the haystack. So you have this haystack, but in this haystack, there are 100,000 needles. Now, what I need you to do is I need you to find all those needles and paint them, but without disturbing the haystack. Oh, and by the way, you can't touch them as you're painting them. And by the way, in the ones in the middle, paint those first because those are the most important. So that's the real kind of complication thing you're really looking at from a crypto standpoint. You can't break anything. These are live systems. They're working. They're business operations. You can't knock them down. This is the business, and God help you if you take out the business because you're trying to update crypto. It's going to go bad for everybody. Again, this is going to be an absolute pain in the butt to get done for most enterprises. Understood. It's going to be trouble, but there's no way around it. We have to do it. And the easiest thing to do is, again, understand what you have and then get services to help you with the things that are super complicated. Because as you were saying, the one important thing is if you have some sort of specialized products or specialized software, that sort of thing, there's going to be some startup that is going to be handling that and take that on for either from a services component or a remediation component. And if not, somebody on here will figure it out. And that's where, as this is a fantastic community for us to be able to have these conversations. Because as we get deeper and deeper into this, judging from us as a community to be able to say, hey, I have this problem. Has anybody else seen this problem? How did you solve it? Because that's what we need to solve. And again, in the end, it doesn't matter whether you use my product or somebody else's product. Being successful is what we're all here together for. And that's the community that you've built that I absolutely adore, because that's what we want to be. We all want to be successful here in making things better for everybody.
Thank you. We're very happy. Actually, I have one, because you made me think about it, that, I mean, in principle, like when the company's gonna be taking that, the crucial gonna be how to split those projects, right? I mean, to secure the operations, because I mean, you will have to do it while still operating. I mean, who can just close their system and say like, well, sorry, like for the next year, once per day, are we gonna be closing some part of operations? So it will be very crucial how to split it, to keep updating it, and then at the same time, I mean, you will be updating it and then testing if that makes sense, if it operates. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I think it's going to be very important, as you say, that we keep meeting and discussing what we are discovering, like what goes wrong, on every step of that. Like, oh, we've split it this way, and it didn't work because it was so interconnected that maybe the system couldn't operate and update, right? I mean, I've been in like a patent office and patent law firms. I mean, this stuff that the data they have is so precious, but the systems are also really old. And even when we were trying to digitalize some of the operations, it was a headache. Like, and now imagine updating the cryptography. I mean, it's going to be a mess.
Oh, yeah. And that's going to be how we all partner together, because some people are going to solve this. I mean, we've got, our partners, Terra Quantum, Patero, Steve, Black Hills, all these folks that we're talking to. We don't have all the answers yet because we haven't run into all the problems yet. And we're not going to get there until we start, right? And it's just like your construction project. If somebody's trying to build a bridge that's into the key of the city, you can't just completely shut it down, because we all need to get to work and do things that have to have that business function. But you're absolutely right in that we have to be able to figure out certain ways to be able to move that to PQC, because again, we will probably have to do this again. Because we now have the NIST standards, but there's no guarantee that's the right way. We don't know if things might be broken. NIST has a whole bunch of things, and they've done a fantastic job as again, building things and having the secondary and tertiary things that are lined up to go up there. What is crypto agility? We still haven't really talked about that from a standpoint of how do we get there, right? So you should be able to use any algorithm, any crypto, anytime, any place. Crypto agility. Yeah, we're not there by any stretch of the imagination.
What it means, right? We never also tried what it would mean, crypto agility. Would that mean leaving some space or adapting? Like I mean, it's a great word, but we don't have a history of adapting
No.
crypto agility. Also, I mean, it sounds good. We all want it, right? Because I mean, it sounds like a great idea, but what it technically means, we will have to also figure it out, right?
Well, it's a strategy, not a product, right? So that's the same thing as zero trust, right? John Kindervag is very clear about that, is its strategy. Now, what we see is the eventuality is that if we can build the robust orchestration engine enough, and we've built the tools to manage into all the crypto, then you should be able to use courses of action or playbooks to go in and change different kinds of crypto in different places. We're a long way from that. It's not like something we can implement tomorrow, but in the end, that whole automated playbooks of, okay, I'm going to change my posture by changing over this crypto. Because again, we're not there yet, but that's super cool stuff.
Thank you for watching this presentation, and thank you for being a valued member of our community.